My name is Natalia Skoczylas, and I welcome you to the webinar, another webinar in the series of webinar we host as part of the Trust in Play project, which is a project funded by Creative Europe Funds. And we run it together with the Goethe Institute in Athens, University of Applied Science in Amsterdam, Edge Riders, and Innovatens. Today's topic will be how to sell tickets, how to make money as game designers, as an artist, how to create communities around games, how to make a living in general. But maybe first, since we're in these very special circumstances, I wanted to talk to our guests, so Alex, Simon, and Matteo, about the ways their practice and their workflow and the way they sustain themselves has changed in the past weeks due to corona pandemic, close down, or whatever. So if you could tell us a little bit how you're surviving, how you're working, how you're maybe not working, keeping yourself creative, trying to find a strategy, for the future, how you're adapting, that would be great. And one more thing. Okay, then I'm going to point who's starting. I wanted to tell everyone that, of course, you're invited to ask questions. Please ask them in the chat, and I'll try. And after half an hour, 40 minutes of the discussion, I'll start including them in the conversation. So, Alex, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex. I run a community and professional theatre-led entertainment and arts venue in the UK. We are based just outside of London. And so most of our work here, most of my practice is about working with an established community of people who live nearby. We've now been in lockdown for 2.5 weeks. We made a decision quite early, around the time that the government decided to finally start telling people that it might be a good idea. We shut down and cancelled all of our stuff for the next 2 months. So a lot of what I'm doing at the moment is waiting to find out what's going on with government grants, what's going on with national funders, local funders, things like that, and trying to keep our small team of people on board, motivated, interested, and I think a lot of people have seen that there's been a bit of a pivot to digital, and a lot of people suddenly moving online and trying to carve out a space for themselves and make themselves relevant in the digital sphere. We've not done that because our focus is on physical community. So at the moment we're kind of in a pause whilst we wait to see what comes next.
Have you already had a chance to experiment with something? Did you try some new formats or, I don't know, ways to create events that would be possible right now?
We've steered clear as far as possible of doing too much. People have just been inundated, I think, especially it feels like in the UK at the moment, there's just like so many European institutions putting their archives and back catalogues up digitally, UK institutions and American institutions as well. There's such a degree of entertainment choice out there. So we have been, where possible, sort of pushing people towards opportunities or ideas that might be a bit different, or something that they might otherwise not come across that isn't from like the National Theatre or wherever. So we've effectively become, certainly through our social media channels and our comms work, we've become more of a kind of signposting organisation, just trying to flag up what else is out there and how people might be able to entertain themselves, or how people might be able to help their kids out with homeschooling or whatever it is that people are doing at the moment. But most of my day is actually just spent think sort of putting things on a back burner for later and starting to think about, we've started this week thinking about maybe what happens next, which is a nice place to be.
Thank you. How about you, Simon? Can you tell us a little bit about your practice before and how it looks right now?
Hi everyone. So my practice, I run a company called Free Ice Cream. We're we kind of straddle the UK and Germany. So I'm based here in Berlin, and my business partner is based in London. So we have been picking up bits of work for NGOs, small and large, and community groups, and using games and play and different methods that give people agency to engage with complex ideas in some way. And so, but most of the stuff we do ends up really pushing people back towards actually just being in the same space as one another and talking, and trying to create like better tools for doing that, more interesting ways of doing that. So that does bring significant problems with the current situation. So there's been like a large amount, I'd say like maybe 50% or more of the projects that we've been working on have now been pushed back by at least a year. And other projects we're still waiting to hear. I mean, in some ways, because we straddle that spectrum, a lot of our work is digital anyway, and we're hoping that the digital work will continue. But everybody's in such uproar at the moment that even the purely digital projects, we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen with those. I think in my kind of longer term history, I've done a lot more stuff that was like B2C, like trying to sell things directly to people. And so the new company for ice cream is really about working with partner organizations, working with NGOs, working with universities, companies. Yeah, there's quite a broad spectrum of people we can work with. All of that stuff is now slowed. All of that stuff is now uncertain in some way. So we are looking again at doing more, focusing more on our digital offering, and while we're waiting again for a series of projects which I think are already on hold, we're doing more self-generated stuff, which is actually in our business plan for this year. I said do more self-generated work anyway, so it's kind of good. So some reason to do it is, or some ability to do it is nice. And I'm saying, like in the deep past, I used to run giant real-world games, which were all about selling tickets directly to people and building communities around that. So in some ways, looking to lessons from my own past for ways to move forward. That's kind of where we're at.
And you, Matteo? How did the situation affect you?
So I'm in New York, which is pretty intense in the last days. Like we are seeing less people in the street. But also I'm exposed to Italy, so like I'm like really advanced on the kind of like self-containment and like social distancing. Actually, I have to say that my practice in the last year is not being a lot about creating new projects, but is more focusing on like project management and teaching. So it didn't change that much, because like project management, I'm like with you, Natalia, and all the others, I'm involved in Trust in Play, so, and in the nomadic branch. So basically we're already in this environment, because like everybody is spread around the world. So we are trying to do a normal like creative process with all the complexity that there are like on being like not in the same place. So this for us, I think, is gonna be like intense, because the topic is like about public space and like interacting with people. But in terms of like framework, we were already like experimenting with that. In terms of like teaching, right now is not like that hard. We just move like our things in online, and we are like proceeding with that. So I feel that I'm in a really privileged position because basically I don't have like this pressure of like pivoting in order like to survive. So I'm really like privileged on that. But in general, I feel a lot like both Simon and Alex said. First, I'm like thinking a lot about things that I learned in the past, and also I'm feeling like I need to pause and like to stay in this space of like reflection and not like moving too fast or like pivot to just to find a solution or experiment like every week. And I don't know, is like something that it was like I was already in this space, or like is more like this like something that is suggesting me to do that because like it's more. If we reflect more, we will probably come up with solutions that are maybe more, I don't know, long-term, sustainable, whatever. So yeah, I'm in this space now.
Yeah, and actually talking about financial survival, I don't know what your situation right now, Simon and Alex, but are you struggling right now, or do you need to find ways to support yourselves or not? If yes, then how? If not, have you heard of some good examples or read some good examples of how people do it right now?
I mean, I think everything's been moving very quickly, but actually not that much time has passed. So I don't think that there are very many new good examples. If anyone else has a better answer than that, please chip in. And yeah, I mean, like we're a small company, so that's already a degree of uncertainty. We work in arts, more uncertainty. We do something weird with unusual clients who don't understand why they would want to hire us in the first place. So kind of used to huge amounts of uncertainty in the day-to-day. And I think as anybody who's ever like worked in I wouldn't call us an agency, but anybody like that kind of model where you have projects that you work with clients with, and the kind of the turnover of those is generally very quick, and the kind of financial forecasting is generally quite short term. I think most of my friends who run agencies tend to think that like 3 months into the future, their accounts go red. So, but then it's always 3 months into the future. So hopefully we are still in that period where it's still 3 months in the future. But I mean, it's definitely more uncertain now, and there are definitely more. There are more reasons for things which seem to be settled to change. So, I mean, a lot of that is a bit like you were saying, Alex. It's a lot of it's just waiting. It's not a set of circumstances that you can control. You can be very charming with an organisation or client you're working with, but they just have to behave as they have to behave. So when things change, it's not necessarily a very proactive situation. That's that end of the world anyway.
We have historically been a very lean organisation anyway, although what we do is probably closer in some respects to kind of more traditional entertainment-based stuff. We work with a broad spectrum of artists and creatives, many of whom are starting off, making their first or second pieces, things like that. So there's a lot of uncertainty for them. But yeah, as Simon just says, like for us, this hasn't been a huge system shock. We've not gone from a place of being like plain sailing, money sorted, we know what we're doing, we don't have to worry about it for the next 18 months. We always live hand to mouth as an organisation, and have done for the decade that I've worked for them. So in that respect, it's like we're used to feast and famine, and this just happens to be a famine.
Okay. Well, let's hope the crisis won't last a year or any longer. We don't know right now, but yeah. Okay, going back to normal times, I wanted to ask you, how were things when they were normal? So first of all, maybe let's talk about building communities. What types of communities do you build and attract to your different activities, games, whatever artistic products you offer? And what are your strategies to attract the right kind of people? And how do you decide which are the right kinds of people to begin with? Whoever wants to start.
I don't think you decide who are the right kinds of people. I think that part of the joy of a community is that it's you interacting with people you don't know. It's people you didn't know before and who aren't necessarily exactly like you. I think maybe there's a shared interest. Maybe there's something which brings people together. But I think that one of the things I like about any community, virtual or physical, is that kind of is being brought into contact with somebody other than you, like who doesn't see the world the way that you do, and needing to but then sharing something despite that or because of that. And I mean, I think if the thing you're doing is has some value, then different people will find it as well. I think this is not very helpful. I mean, I think that most of the community building I've ever done has been really organic. It hasn't been any kind of like technical community building strategies. It haven't been like spending lots of money on outreach to find particular target demographics. It's really been the kind of field of dreams method, obviously, of doing something ridiculous and then people finding it. So there's that. I mean, I'm not suggesting that that's the only way of doing it, but I think that takes care of that who's in the community bit of it. Like the thing that you make, it has a certain life or a certain kind of joy to it. Then people who are attracted to that will in some way have some sort of commonality, and I think that's a real strength of it as well. Is that if you've got something which people are doing, I mean, games are great for this because you have a shared experience, and if it's in the city, then there's a whole world of people around you who do not have that shared experience, and it automatically creates this special group who have special knowledge, and therefore have like a special bond. And so in those circumstances, I think that different kinds of communities can form, and historically, I've seen very disparate kinds of people come together and become different factions of communities in that way.
Mm-hmm. Could you maybe give us an example of a game around which you build a community you're particularly happy about?
The two things that I would say really were that I used to run a games festival called IGFest, which is an interesting games festival, and there's started from a lab, big lab, interesting games lab in like 2008, which was like the first informed game testing, pervasive games as we were calling it then, games testing lab, and so that started as a proposition that was being bandied around. I was like, oh, I had this idea. I've seen all these other games being played around the world, and there was this festival in New York. There was I was working for Blast Theory, playing their games and going to different arts festivals, and say, okay, there is a kind of common thread to all of this, which is something about real world play, something in the city, some kind of ridiculous premise, and so bringing those things together. Brought together, and then making some kind of public offering for that, brought together groups of people who just had a kind of curiosity, wanted to try something new. It also brought together, created an academic interest of people who were interested in new forms of play and urban strategies, and that project started off as quite niche. Like you could look around this webinar and see the faces and say, this there's a kind of person who turns up to something which is called a games lab, and it's like, yes, And it really went from this kind of very enthusiastic group of geeks who were into this stuff, and then it very quickly grew to the point where we would always charge tickets for IGLabs from about maybe like the 4th or the 5th lab or something. But it was like super small amount of money. It was like, you know, $5 or something. But it was just something that it did two things. One, it helped to control the numbers. So if you sign up online to something, you're not very inclined to go to it. But if you sign up online and pay $5, then you're like, well, okay, well, it's enough to make you want to go. I think it also does the reverse. There's another part to that, which is the value proposition is there from the beginning, and it helps somebody to recognize that the thing they're doing is valuable because you pay for it, even if it's a small amount. So that, I think, changed significantly this very early scene into something which was much more like an entertainment product, which you're like, oh, I'm going to be entertained, and the entertainment is this kind of seat of your pants world of new games creation. And then that grew into the festival, and that scene of people came along with, and then the festival grew into the zombie game, of which we eventually sold like 60,000 tickets. But it was a kind of linear progression through all of that. That really started with trying to get like a value proposition right at the beginning, and then actually we tried very hard to look at, like, I mean, with the festival there was so much that you do. There'd be all kinds of different types of games, different types of offerings, different types of social relations. I really tried hard to track the stuff that fell into that kind of Venn diagram of stuff that we thought was really interesting and stuff that people would actually want to turn up to. And that seemed to work. And you know, so by the time it came to the hobby game, that had a whole other world of communities that were because it was like a national event. We would tour to 14 cities, and that people would travel between cities to go to different games, and then you'd have this kind of shared experience out in the city, being terrified, full of adrenaline, and then have these really strong bonding experiences, and then you'd end up people having these little communities. They go and stay with each other. People got married. People propose, like, I had part of the game so they could propose to each other within there. There was a whole group from Scotland who set up their own independent community of people who wanted to perform in horror experiences, which they then went on to provide like horror extras for movies, and so there's this kind of all these little fragments of community which would pop up, and but I think like tailoring to those or working with those is a very different proposition to starting them. I think the question is about starting them.
Yeah, and Alex, so you work with a very specific community, and as you were preparing the game festival this winter, which probably got cancelled mostly. For example, how did you decide what kind of community, which kind of community members would you attract to which kind of events, or rather, how would you program the event so that you can have diverse audiences coming?
Yeah. Well, most of our festival went ahead because it was so early in the year. It was back in January, so it was before any of this was really anywhere known. Just following on from Simon's point, because it came to mind immediately. There's something that I've heard us say within the Edge Riders community before, which is also that, especially when it comes to events, that the right people are the people who turn up. But just by turning up, you become one of the right people. And I've also seen creatives and sort of experience making people who tear their hair out. We had 2,000 people turn up to our thing, but they weren't the right people. Like, you had 2,000 people make something for them. They're now part of your community and they're with you. In terms of what we did with gameplay, So we work with a geographically focused community, but we are 40 miles, 60 kilometers from the centre of London. We are ethnically diverse. We are socio and economically diverse. So when I talk about Bedford, and I never talk about the community of Bedford as if it's sort of homogenous. It's always the communities of Bedford. And with gameplay, what we were trying to do and what we're still trying to do is to reach an audience that we engage at other times in our program, but don't necessarily hold on to. So for us, gameplay is a festival specifically aimed at trying to attract sort of 12 to 16-year-olds at the point that we call like emerging cultural consumers, or basically young people who are starting to make their own decisions about what they want to do, but are still reliant on their parents for money, transport, permission, whatever. So a lot of what we do with our sort of more theatrical or music or entertainment based stuff is around understanding who the decision maker is in the target audience that we're trying to reach. By and large, just looking purely at our ticket sales data for the last couple of years, I can tell you that the decision makers in our families are women aged 35 to 40 or retired women aged 55 to 65. I just know that. That's what the data tells us, that they book tickets and they make the purchasing decisions for our types of work that we do 3 times out of 4. So with gameplay, what we were trying to do and what we're continuing to do is partly to reach them, but also to provide like a stimulus or something that's going to lodge in the minds of dad as well as mum, who's going to look at that and think, this is an opportunity. Oh, this is something I'm interested in as well. This is not to say that obviously mums aren't gamers as well. They are. But to try and find those moments in our marketing or in like the stuff that we're putting out into the world to encourage people to get involved, that spoke to the younger people directly, and that perhaps tried to lodge in the minds of the people who don't normally make the decisions about what was going to happen. Yeah, that's mostly what we focused on with gameplay. Outside of that, and in the sort of the rest of the work that we do, yeah, we've focused very much on trying to understand who our customers are, what experience they are anticipating, and therefore what experience we should try to give them, or how we should shape that experience, and to consider them as what audience experience is a big part of what we think about, because ultimately that's even though we're just a theatre, that is what we're selling.
Can you maybe give an example as well? Maybe from the game festival, maybe from the last year's programming, something that worked out really, really well by accident or by intention, and attracted interesting new people.
Yeah, let's have a think. So with I'm just trying to contextualize it and think of an example. We ran, as part of gameplay, we ran a single day where we had a few like workshops and masterclasses on various elements of game design, and we ran that on the Friday night alongside other opportunities. Classic board games, there was remote controlled cars, there was theatrical game experiences taking place in other rooms that people could move in and out of as well. someone had made a story about loss and about dementia, but played like kind of like a tarot card game, which was beautiful as well. And so when we started off the idea, it was kind of like, well, we're going to have these as segmented experiences, and people will buy for this and then they'll buy for that. And as we got closer to the day, that didn't feel right, didn't seem right. So we eventually on the day just decided, okay, anyone who's bought tickets for anything, we're just going to encourage them to go and experience things, and to get involved, and to enjoy things that they perhaps didn't think that they would be interested in, but because they were in the venue, and all the other things that were happening within the Gameplay Festival were going on alongside it, it meant that we as an organization, but actually we as individual human beings who work here, and who care about the festival, were able to start conversations with members of the public and say, hey, you should go upstairs and you should go and do this thing that you hadn't thought about, that maybe wasn't on your radar, but just by turning up to the wider event, we believe that you will also get some value from going and experiencing the unbuilt room or taking part in one of these other things. So the feedback we got from that, from people who came along, who were like, oh, we were just going to pop in for an hour and play a board game, but then we stayed and you encouraged us to go into this theatrical experience and play this other game. And then while we were there, we thought we'd play some retro computer games. And before we know it, we've been with you for 4.5 hours. And that was lovely for us to hear, because we're newly starting up, and ultimately we're trying to build that kind of personal relationship with as many of our customers as we can, as many of our audiences as we can.
That's also a good way to avoid people from, avoid the situation where, your customers are unhappy. At least they have a choice. So if they didn't make the right choice in the beginning, they can experience something great. And Matteo, how about your projects? Would you like to tell us something about building communities?
Yeah. So well, Natalia, you're the one of that experienced there were two projects that it made me think about community. The first one was Critical City, which was our first project, which was a creative community that went on for 5 years. And I totally agree with Simon about the thing that you will never know who are the people that will show up, but those are the right people if there is joy in what you're doing. We had this idea, okay, so Critical City is gonna attract creative people that are designer or artists or other things like that. But instead, our best player was a retired teacher from Central Italy, art retired teacher from Central Italy, which was 67 years old. And she was just blowing everybody minds away. So, and we had the cool thing was our offering, our gift was something that was there and was clear. And because the gift or the value proposition, in marketing term, was super clear, everybody that was interested was able to jump in and take the opportunity to do whatever they wanted with that. So our community and we were thinking, oh, we are designing a game, Critical City is a game. But at the end, it was a community. So it was also from a business point of view, if you look at the hours that we spend on creating engagement for the community, was way more higher than the hours that we spend in the game design. So it was definitely a community in that sense, and was a community of misfits, I would say, creative people that were not traditionally engaged with creativity. So yeah, that was really a big discover. And the other thing that...
Wait just a second, before you move to the next community, I just want to ask, what kept you running for 5 years?
We were applying for a lot of grants. constantly. The first year and a half we won, and we started because of this grant that was huge. Then we thought, oh, maybe this is a way to activate like local communities. So we started applying for like smaller grants all around Italy. And then there was like one very, very tiring year where basically we were not able to sustain ourselves. So we were doing marketing, like business work, and we were giving our free time to that. And the last year we say to our community, guys, we're not able to do that anymore. Do you want to help? And basically we trained 30 people all around Italy to run the game by themselves. So basically there was like this crew of like ex-player, like player that was really like, they were really like engaged and with us, like they spent 3 years with us. And they basically created a new Critical City was working with season. So they created a new season by themselves, and they ran the game by themselves for 1 year, basically. But the thing was that in terms of community, I don't know, for me, like they look like you need energy to sustain community, and you have to put energy in order to everybody to have energy. And you need also like fresh energy from outside. So one thing that happened was like in Italy we have like this say that is like the cloth was short. So basically if you are like freezing and the cloth is short, you're like covering your head, but then your feet are outside. So like in the last season was like that. So the players were on this side of the organization, so they were not giving energy to the community, not doing stuff. So the cloth was short, so they were like putting all their energy to run the game, but we didn't have new player coming in. So it was really hard to have like the community going. So they were really frustrated. So we decided like, okay, this was good. Let's close this community. And for me, like one thing that I wish we had more opportunity to do. I mean, we had the opportunity because of the duration. We were able like to be in contact with the community. But something that I think I want to do more when I'm doing projects like that is like being able to listen to them, not only offer something, but like being able to really understand better who they are and what they want, and if I can do something for them or not or whatever. Just like because the framework of like I'm giving this to you. Maybe you have to pay or like whatever, but like it's like this transaction that is really economic, or like is a transaction. I'm the artist, I'm giving you this, blah blah blah, and it's not like we are in this together cycle or like feedback for like so yeah. I would love, I mean, for me, like one of the critical things on communities, like being able to listen and have channel to listen as much as possible, to understand who are the people that are like giving their time to your community. So basically, who are the people that are with you on that?
Yeah, so I guess BB Games, you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, Basilicata Birthday Games were another community that we created, but was different because it was shorter. So basically, we were inviting 30 creative in one city in the Basilicata region, which is in the south of Italy. And basically it was like a giant creative circus, and it lasted for 1 month. Basically we had like 30 people in 4 cities every 2 weeks. So there were 120 players. And for me, like maybe this is a question for you, Natalia, because like for me, I was like just like organizing the thing and was like so crazy that I mean, I definitely received a lot of energy from you, but like was really hard for me to understand if there was like a community around that. I know that there are like people that like, again, they are married now, they are together, blah, blah, blah. And you are here also, like, and you discovered like games, I think, there, and then you organized your journey to the end of the night in Slovenia by yourself, like, so I definitely see the result of that, but I don't know in terms of community if it worked somehow. Definitely was similar to the Athens, I think, experience that we have together this October. So like a lot of creative people or together doing a lot of creative stuff, being immersed in a city, and just like create this bond that can last also after the experience, which is also a big value on the things that we are doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, there was a book written even about it in a way. I mean, it was an autobiography in which a chapter was about the experience too. And we're in touch with a lot of the people who went there that week with me. So yeah, I think it worked. It really worked. Simon, you wanted to say something?
I mean, it's interesting how similar all of these experiences are. I think there's something about a spectrum here, where on one end of the spectrum, running events which you try to have a seamless edge between the kind of artists and then the kind of community people doing it, and then the other end of the spectrum being running events whereby you're the artist or you're the creative and you just sell the thing to somebody, and they don't have that much say in it other than opting into it. I think that I mean, certainly there's spent a lot of time with Games Lab and the festivals trying to kind of grease the pole to make that kind of transition really slippery and easy, so that somebody who would come to a playtesting lab and say, and give some advice about how they think a game should be changed. Oh, that's a really good idea. You seem to have a real flair for this. Why don't you come and get involved further? Trying to, get people to step forward. And there was that was really successful. And there's a number of people who came through that process who now work as full-time game designers or work in the industry in some way. And that's really gratifying to see that kind of transition. But I think there's something about scale as well, because I guess the scale of your organization is part of that as well. But it's only really possible to do that with that's a lot of contact. That's a lot of energy to put into the community to try and help people to do that. And that's appropriate for some instances. So Games Lab was doing that. And by the time we got to the zombie game, where we were selling tickets for, it's like up to like $60 a ticket, selling 2,000 tickets per city, and like there's no way you can. I mean, the whole value proposition has changed at that point. So somebody is buying into something, they're paying good money for it, and they want an experience, and they want it to be delivered to them, and they don't want the touchy-feely end of like, hey, how would you like it to be? Actually, it's just this. They just want this thing to come through, and actually that's got real value as well. And that having an experience, designing something which feels cohesive, that is going to have people, that's a really safe space for people. And there's all kinds of other kinds of community which can come out of having that safe space, and that kind of larger scale. I mean, that somebody was asking here about how do you reach people in the chat there. And I mean, that was very straightforward marketing, right? And PR. That was hiring the best PR agency that we could afford and getting them to place adverts in all the newspapers and in unusual places. And again, I mean, it's still a proposition which was selling. That was still, can you survive a night in a zombie apocalypse? And so the idea should be like, what? You're going to do what? There's at the core, that initial thing of like not going on brand, but going on the quality of the thing you're making. The thing itself has some heart to it, and that goes a long way. But you can just use like totally normal channels to build that community as well. If you want to do something at scale, then you're going to have to use totally normal marketing channels.
Yeah, I also think that, if you have a community, you have a better chance of mitigating whatever problems there could be during the experience. While if you sell an expensive ticket and the experience is not up to people's expectations, then, you just kind of, yeah. But yeah, that's the risk, of course. Alex, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to talk a little bit off the back of that about not just scale, but also time. Because one of the things that we talk about within what we're trying to do here. So there are elements of our audience that we are trying to build actively, and that requires time, and it requires resource, and it requires focus, preferably all three at the same time if possible. But alongside that, we also talk quite a lot about growing our community, which might mean, you know, every so often, occasionally checking in with people, putting on a show for a particular community that we would like to see more often in our theatre, pushing that, you know, going out of our way to connect with people within those communities, to talk to them about, you know, we've got this event coming up. Are you interested? Or we had this event. How come you didn't come? Tell us more. You know, give us feedback. What is it that you're looking for? And as with, you know, sort of most processes, natural kind of organic processes, sometimes it yields results and sometimes it doesn't. But it's kind of like our ongoing audience gardening. But that requires time. It just requires, you know, it in some instances, it's the best part of a decade it's taken me to, and almost building like interpersonal relationships with certain organizations or certain community leaders or whatever it might be, so that there is a build up of trust there. They trust me, or they trust our venue, that they will have an experience that they are looking for, and that is something that we're lucky to be able to do, because we are a place-based, a space-based initiative. You know, we are embedded in our community because we own bricks and mortar in the community. And it might be that for other organizations or for artists and makers, that some people think, yeah, what I want to achieve here is sort of a quick build. I want to make something using my time and my resource and my money in order to make something. But it may be that there are other approaches that people can take which are more long term, because I think that some of the kind of more organic processes in the long term, that's where your sustainability lies, is in the time heavy but the not resource heavy stuff.
Yeah, and that's especially relevant for a brick and mortar venue like yours. So we have one question from Sebastian. It's a question for Simon. Working now more with NGOs and organizations to fund projects, do you find it easier or harder to create urban play experiences for players?
I think it's often still a hard sell to get like organizations, like NGO style organizations, to run event-based projects. So most of the kind of real world city stuff is you need, unless your budgets are really big and you can build really nice software to mediate the process, then you need some humans on the ground somewhere to mediate and make things happen. And that actually limits the scale of things. So NGOs generally want to have something which is at scale. So that becomes difficult. And I think generally that there are less opportunities within that sector for making that kind of playful work. But that said, I think that making that kind of, I think people want that jam on their toast, but they have to have something. They have to have cheese. That's a terrible metaphor. So what I mean by that is like having that kind of history, having that kind of project, people like to engage with you. That, oh, this is really fun. You've got this really fun work which you do. We want some of this, but can we have it like this big over here? And can it be essentially digital and still have all that fun and vibrancy and like have that kind of connected spirit where you're doing things and it's just like, of course you can. But I think it's, yes, I think there's a kind of, there's a group which many organizations want a piece of that, but not necessarily to go all the way into a really real world playful event. No problems.
And we have one more question. Well, you partly answered that, but if there's anything else you could add to how to engage with your community using, publicity, word of mouth, whatever strategies, or also for selling your tickets, actually, that you maybe didn't mention yet, that would be great if you could chip in.
Yeah, maybe I can start. We were like using a lot Facebook ads in Critical City, at least, was like the main way we were like inviting new people in. Instead, lately we focused a lot on newsletter and personalized newsletter. For us, like, was really important to have a relationship again and open the dialogue with our community and people that were like following us. So like, yeah, we wrote like tons of emails and a lot of also questionnaire and survey in order like to understand who were the people that were interested in what we were doing. So I think we were discussing that with Alex, and maybe you can like add that the fact that when you are talking online, it's important that you are real people and not like an organization shouting your message, but it's more like, my name is Matteo and this is why I'm writing to you, and who are you? So this personalization, I think, was really key for us, like to be humans before being, I don't know, Urban Games Factory or like our project at the time.
Yeah, I think following on from that, like there's also, it's understanding when is the right time to adopt your corporate image and when is the right time to be the human. There are certain elements of the process that really benefit from being kind of slightly impersonal and computerized, especially if you're selling things. That process whereby a person sends them money and gets their token or docket or ticket or whatever it is that you're sending them, that's often an element where you kind of want to depersonalize it a bit and make it more of a like clear, obvious structure. And that might be where you're saying, thank you very much for buying a ticket, and you speak in your organizational language. But outside of those kind of purely transactional, almost like contractual obligations, I find that the personal touch is always the best one to do if you've got the time. One of the things that we like to try and do wherever possible is something called audience personas, where you sort of work with stereotypes to a certain degree, but you start to imagine who you think you would like to be there, and you consider them as fully rounded human beings. What are their other interests other than buying a ticket to your game? What else are they doing there? Where do they spend their money? Where do they go? Where do they shop? What kinds of organizations or initiatives do they engage with? Do they watch mainstream television, or are they, do they watch stuff on YouTube? Like, as makers quite often who you expect to see sat in the room. And so you can extrapolate from that data and start to create a persona. And then with that, it becomes almost a performative action in itself. You put on the hat of that person and you say, how would I like to be communicated with if these are the parameters by which I operate my life? It's a bit woolly. It's not a science, but it really helps us think about tone. And in terms of just a pure marketing thing, it helps us think about like visual identity. And I know Matteo's done a load of stuff around, which he did in Athens, about like all of the different ways that they communicated about a single project to different groups of people using different images. Each one tailored to a particular interest group. Yeah, that's a really great basis for us to do that kind of work, is just to say, who are these people, and let's start to imagine them as real characters. Even if they're not real people, they are at least real characters.
Matteo is challenging the rest of you guys who are watching in silence. If anybody wants to share your experiences with building communities, does anybody want to share a story or an example?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of like people listening to us today that they have a lot of like story of which probably will enrich everybody resilience in this moment. Like, so if someone like from the audience, they have like some strategy that they use like to build their own community, I would love to listen to that.
If nobody volunteers, we can keep it as a homework. So if you think of something or you know of something, then you can post it as a comment on the platform. Okay, I'll just finish and then Simon. Yeah. So under the webinar, when we post the recording, you can also share great examples yeah, later on. Simon, please.
Just a continuation from this idea of engagement. I talked a little bit earlier on about starting communities and actually engaging with your community once it's formed is very different. So at Slingshot, my previous company, when we were running these kind of large-scale games, we did a lot of very similar exercises to you, actually, Alex, like trying to understand who were buying the tickets, but also we had some data because they were buying things from us. So we did a whole bunch of analysis, and so we got to understand to relatively good, to a functional degree, who was buying the tickets and what kind of. I think the thing was useful for us was like, what choices were they making? It's like, okay, am I going to buy a ticket to this game, or am I going to buy a ticket to this other thing? And what's the other thing that they might be doing? And that's really useful. It's like, okay, so what kind of segments are you in? How do people think about the thing you're doing? And knowing that choice, you can then start to talk to people much more about, well, what are they trying to get out of that choice? So then you can really help to bring people into your experience by highlighting the aspects of it which fit within those parameters. I think but giving people good customer service in some ways. Oh God, that seems so dull. We had somebody full time just like refunding tickets and sending things out and running little competitions for getting T-shirts and like having this very human voice. So I think the other thing that to be when you scale your project, when you start off and it's just you in the community and everybody's in it together. Once that gets to a certain point, that you cross a line and you are no longer the friendly neighborhood game maker. You become the man, and then people want a piece of you, and they want to, and so it's an awkward transition when you become a large organization that. While everybody loves you to begin with, and as soon as anything goes wrong, everybody's like clamoring at the edges. Like any kind of like when somebody loves a game, they often complain about the small thing that doesn't make it quite perfect. But so that's definitely a thing with events in real life. So I've been through that cycle a number of times, and right on cue, we're in that cycle right now because we're just about to set up the Games Lab here in Berlin. So IGLab Berlin. That's a secret link to IGLab Berlin, which we were going to start just like last Thursday. We were going to have the first one. Obvious reasons we're not having a real world games lab, but we are focusing a lot on what we can do in this space now, and what is our responsibility in this space, and what can we do to build a community of people who are interested in this style of play in a city, and how we can connect people, and going forward when we allow out our houses again, how are we going to reintroduce the ability to touch each other? That's going to be some delicate procedures. So yeah, if you're interested, come and sign up.
Sorry, thank you very much. I'm going to also, can I post the link on the platform? Or is it secret? I can.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, you can. It's just, it's going to be, the events are going to be taking place in Berlin, right? We also run one in the UK, so there is a UK version and a German version coming soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I guess the question from Test is to you again. How did you go from it's free, try it out to pay, then you can use it? Or to any of you actually who has this experience?
As I was saying, for the Games Lab, we started charging for it early, and we didn't charge very much. But I think that that proposition is really is important. That it's a commercial relationship for this thing. I think you can go a long way with community-led games, and if anybody else who's done a Journey to the End of the Night can knows for sure that you can do a lot of stuff with people who are doing it because they love it. But if you want, that extra step into making something repeatable and safe, it is really expensive. So it doesn't really work to have that as free all the time. Or you might have the same problem as Matteo is saying, is that actually your community comes together and focus all of its energy on the kind of the product, but actually then there's this whole other problem of generating people to pay for this or to enliven it in some way. So it's all of that is expensive. So I mean, charge things as soon as possible, even if it's not very much, and then you can put the prices up later. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Matteo can also add a little bit, because you've also changed the model as you were kind of running out of funds to ask the community to support you. I guess it's also part of the problem with the funding, that if you get the public funding, you're not allowed to sell tickets many times with European funding, for example, right?
Yeah.
So then,
yeah, that was really traumatic, because like after 7 years of like doing B2B basically, so we were like sustaining ourselves. Basically, we were applying for grants, get the money, create a project, offer it for free to our community, and then the grant is out, you apply for something else, you do a new project, you create a new community, and then it's out, and again and again and again. For 7 years, we decided like to like try to grow and build something more stable. So we tried to go B2C, and we were doing things very polished. I think after 7 years, we were like thinking, oh, we're really good. We're really, really good. So we were like, we did like a Journey to the End of the Night. It was like 1,400 people, and everybody was like amazed. And so like we were like feeling that we were really confident on like our level of the quality of what we were offering. So we were like, when we tried to switch to B2C, we said, okay, we're gonna like do something that is amazing because we are really good. And everybody was saying to us, you are really good as well. So we were like really planning for crash and for failure. And we did that amazingly. We failed amazingly because like we set the expectation so high and we added like this level of like transaction. So you were paying a ticket to come to our new production. But because like all before that, in order like to have people, we had like to have amazing production that were like perfect, because the event was for free. So everybody, you had like to get them like engaged, and you have like to offer something that is outstanding. We did the same, but then the product was like the show was not outstanding at all, because like there was like this, as Simon said, this mixed like new change of framework of our like the people that were like playing. It was like, I'm paying for this, and it was like the first time that we were like offering something that people were playing. So it was like there was like a tricky things there, and I think like setting the expectation too high was our bigger mistake, because like we were like promising something that was not the reality of what we were giving them, and this was like a big issue. Yeah. So going back to the question, it's free, try it out, or like pay so you can use it, or like buy a ticket is not free anymore. I don't have an answer yet. Definitely, I like the project that we did after that, after like Codice Indaco, which was like 2016, our like big failure, but also like a success, because like we sold like 800 tickets in 4 hours. It was like, you should add a level, like as Simon said, like something you pay some maybe small, but like you commit to coming because you pay like something small. So like this thing is different now, and we are learning what that means from a player perspective to pay something. But yeah, I don't know if I answered, sorry.
Yeah.
There's a slight nuance to that as well, is that because things like the zombie game, we kind of split the audience there as well. So there was a situation there where there was two offerings within that game. One was to try and survive the night as a kind of survivor, and the other was to be a zombie. And if you wanted to be a zombie, that was free. So you were still part of the community, and the game worked. Like, it's very much like Journey to the End of the Night, but instead of build-up tag, it's controlled. We have standard population, and we know where everyone is. So it took something of that model and then made it safer and gave it much more theatre and story. But having that kind of double community, in part comes from the history of the fact that we started entirely as a community-based group of people making stuff from Games Labs and expanding out, and then the festival. All that felt very kind of hands-on and very kind of flat structure. And then going from that to the commercial model, we took part of that with us and then had this kind of commercial layer. So we made the money by selling tickets, but then we maintained this kind of core community of people who got involved because they loved it. That community was expensive to run, but the value proposition which came along with it, I mean, not uncynically, it was fantastic to have a group of people who, like, the best bit about that game, if you're a total enthusiast, the best thing to do is to be a zombie. And that bit was free. So the people felt really loved and respected for that, because that's the bit they wanted to do. And they were giving this kind of all this value to all the other players. And we looked after them really well. And we had this whole system for ranking and scaling people. And so, and if you wanted to be one of the zombies, in order to do that, we ran training camps. So you'd have to pass, you go to zombie school, and you have to get your training certificate that said that you've got your this year's certificate for being in zombie school. All kinds of tracking for people through that, for how they behave, what kind of performance characteristics, how they behave. But also within them, there's all these kind of other crazy communities formed within that little group as well. So now you've got two communities which are running in very different ways, but they really, it felt like they really integrated nicely and really kind of made a virtuous situation. So potentially you can find some of this kind of mixed solution where there are some people who have helped you along the way in developing the thing you're doing. Maybe they can have some special role within the project as it goes on, which respects the fact that they've actually been important to the development of the thing you're doing, but actually doesn't change the fact that the thing needs to grow, which means you need to make money, which means you need to sell things. So you can do that. Disclaimer: it's expensive and difficult, but it can be really rewarding.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody know? Well, Sebastian is asking: does anybody know any urban game players, makers, designers who earn substantial income through Patreon? Does anybody know?
I know Will has got a Patreon account. I don't know whether he makes any money through it. You can ask Will.
Will Drew, right? Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting, but to think about Patreon a little, and maybe the concept that it's behind that, which is whatever. Patreon, like, you can explore the community that is around that, but basically there is this concept that is called the long tail, which is this theory that if you have like that, you can have like I don't know, something that is really popular and like is like in this top of the diagram, but then also like you can have like something that is not that popular that like, I don't know, 100 people are passionate about and people are like super happy to pay for it. So like one of the, I think was the founder of Wired that wrote an article about the long tail. And basically he said that if you want to sustain yourself, start build your community immediately, because you don't need a lot of people. You just need 1,000 people that are passionate about you and they are willing to give you $100 a year. So like basically you can make like, you can sustain yourself in this way. Like if you have a community around you that is passionate about what you're doing, and you're able like to listen to them and like create something for them that is like, there is a value. So this is also another like, I think, especially in this time of like where resilience is really important, and you need to like change yourself and like offer something that is different, like to, and we have like to help each other and etc. I think like thinking about how to build your own community that is not like a giant community and you don't know them, but it's like, I don't know, 200 people that you know them, and you're like cross helping each other, and they're passionate about what you're doing, is something, is a thing that it's important to start immediately, just like, right. And I think everybody has this community already around us, because like if you just write a message on Facebook and like ask, hey, someone is interested on something that I'm doing, you're gonna have for sure like at least 50 people showing up and say, yeah, what's up, what are you doing? So yeah, I don't know, like one suggestion that I feel like to suggest in this moment is like, look around. We are surrounded by beautiful people, and we can help each other a lot.
Yeah, that's a good note to finish on. Maybe one last tiny question. If anybody knows if festivals are a good way to make money? No. Okay, so we have a consensus here, it seems. Unless we have a proof otherwise.
If you own the alcohol licensing part of the festival that you are running, then it's a fantastic way to make money, assuming that the thing that you're doing allows alcohol consumption to take part. But if you want to just make money off of the thing that you're doing in the middle of it, absolutely not.
That's why you always need parties. So remember, parties and alcohol. Okay. Simon, you have to admit yourself.
Obviously, we used to, this kind of like large scale zombie game we used to run with a bar at the end of it. So about 90 minutes in the game, average game would have like 600 people in it. And we take over a warehouse, and we make a kind of party in the warehouse at the end. But that's really difficult, and that's a whole other business model to add on to the ability to run the kind of game in the first place. And actually, a party that has 600 people who have this one thing in common, I mean, what music are you going to play? It's no one's got the same music tastes, and what kind of actually creating the atmosphere that is right for that is very difficult, and getting the timings right, so the scale of the place is good, so that somebody can come in and at the beginning and at the end, and it still feels good. Yeah, so, I mean, I wouldn't go to it straight away. I mean, in terms of like music festivals, I don't know. I've always thought that what makes real world games special is the fact that you're playing and everyone else isn't. And at a festival, everyone's playing, and it's less special to begin with. And also, I think that it's not safe. Everyone's off their heads. It's not. Like if you want to do something once, you can take risks. If you want to do something repeatedly, that's not a safe environment. No one, you can't know that people aren't going to turn up to your events like super high, and then who knows what kind of unknown behavior comes out of that. Yeah. So yeah, don't have a bar at the beginning of your game. Don't do that. It's bad.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much. It was a great discussion, and I hope that everyone learned a little bit of something new. So if there's anything later you would like to ask whatever, please go to Trust in Play platform and ask your questions there. Otherwise, I wish you a great evening, everyone, or day, whatever part of the day it is. And yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, and we hear each other soon.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.